Hello and welcome to this week's review of the latest episode of My Hero Academia entitled Izuku Midoriya vs Tomura Shigaraki. You know the rules and so do I. Let me know what you thought about this week's episode in the comment section down below and you will be read out in next week's show. Watch you there, be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, click the bell and do all the YouTube stuff that YouTube wants you to do because YouTube is an increasingly scary place for small content creators. Support your local small content creator today. It'll do them a power of good. Now on to the review. Well, I guess we can't call this program My Hero Academia anymore, can we? Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba. Anyway, we'll start off with the review itself, as we always do, by starting out with the positives, and I have to say that it was great to get a better and clearer understanding of the history and some of the past of One for All. I will be honest here now, I am going to get that and All for One mixed up, so forgive me, it just happens when you have two things with very near identical names to one another. But anyway, back to the topic at hand. It was good to get a clearer understanding of the history of it as well as the previous users of it. Not all of them, there's still some things that are going to be ambiguous for a little while longer, some elements of it that are going to remain mysterious, and some things that I hope will remain mysterious for the longer term. I think that this, as well as the nature of quirks itself, is something that needs to remain ambiguous. With One for All, yeah, you can explain a little bit more, but we'll see exactly how far it goes with it. I'm not going to be in a position where I'm going to start stomping my feet and saying anything's ruined right now, because quite frankly, it isn't. What we got this week was really great. It was a great sense of world building from a certain point of view, and it was something that I do feel was well overdue. I am glad that we're finally getting a clearer understanding of it, as up until now it has kind of felt a little bit too much like your typical anime power-up golden ticket to the future kind of a deal. This is the new power that is better than all the powers, and that was just kind of it. And with this, we've got a better understanding of it and its potential limitations. As well, that's a ticking clock that we've now added into proceedings. And we'll see exactly where all that goes with it. I will admit that here and now it does kind of knacker a plan that I had for a video towards the end of this season. I was going to do a How My Hero Academia End video with what little we know from the anime so far, and well, I guess I'm going to have to revise that a little bit, but hey, there's worse things I could be doing with my time right now. The episode itself was weirdly refreshing. It was refreshing to get an episode focused around Midoriya, which might seem like an insane thing to say, bearing in mind that he is the main character, but I feel that for the greatest majority of time during this entire series as a whole, I think he hasn't really been the focus as he really should have been. He's oftentimes been just pushed to the side as we've focused on other characters and their own personal backstories and dramas. And it is good that we're actually finally getting a sense as to where he is in his journey as a hero. In this episode, we do get a sense of him starting to mature and to grow into the role a lot more. Yes, some of that comes down to the influence of All Might and his education under him, but we get an idea as to who he is and who he would be if he were to become a true, proper superhero and didn't have all this nonsense to deal with. And I feel that while some may roll their eyes at his I want to try and save him bit as regards to Tomura, I do feel that is an angle that is at least worth trying, and something that I do feel should at least be attempted within this program and this manga series by extension. Again, I know that a lot of people are going to roll their eyes at it because it is a very much a power of friendship saves the day kind of thing, and yes, I do know that that does not sit well with a lot of people, but from what I have seen of anime since I started watching it again from a couple of years back, that whole concept really isn't a thing. More often than not, it's a case of our hero just unlocks the new power to defeat the villain, then unlocks the new power to defeat the next villain, keeps going on with that. There isn't really this tense sense of an attempt at a more pacifistic, negotiated truce, for want of a better manhandled description of it, and maybe that is a thing in other anime, but it certainly hasn't been within this particular subgenre that I've been witness to over the past couple of years of it. So yes, whilst I'm sure that certain audiences are rolling their eyes at that whole idea that he's going to try and save Tomura, he's going to try and bring him to the light, for want of a better phrase, I think that for a program like this, and for this particular subgenre where they don't really attempt that kind of thing, I think that it's an interesting direction. Whether or not they'll go with that fully, whether or not they'll commit to it, and whether or not they'll stick the landing with it is a whole other matter entirely. Again, I'm sure there are people that will still roll their eyes at it, and I will admit that I have only come back to anime a couple years back after what can best be described as a 15-year break from it, so, you know, I might be speaking out of terms with it, but hey, we'll move on. One of the more dramatic moments I did appreciate was the sense of regret that we got from Nana, that being the All for One user before All Might, and her sense of regret in wishing that things had gone differently had she not abandoned her family in the way that she had done, that maybe Tomura wouldn't have gone down the path that he had done. Which I appreciate the fact that they're doing it. They're going down angle and having that be a factor of the discussion. How much I think that it was needed, I don't know, because I can see the counter-argument to it. I can understand why she did it. She didn't do it out of a sense of selfishness. She did it because she felt she needed to in order to protect her family. And maybe hadn't she have done that, then All for One would have still come along and still done nasty things, or just outright murdered them. I don't know, but I know that's for people that do what ifs to consider more so than it is for me. I think that as a whole entity, this episode has been rather enjoyable, as now is the case. We have to talk about the negatives, and I will admit there aren't that many. I think there's only maybe one, and maybe one other that I can maybe improvise my way into. I think that, and it isn't a major negative, there is a part of me that wonders if this episode couldn't have been delivered in a better way. It feels like 90% of this episode is just people sat around delivering exposition, and that's kind of it. Maybe there was a better way in delivering it, a way that was more efficient and a way which was more visually dynamic. I really don't know, but this is one of those battles of show versus tell. And it isn't really as clear-cut as some people make it out to me. It is not all show, don't tell. It really isn't, because, quite frankly, I'll be honest, it's not as clear-cut as that. I've been working as a writer for 15 years now. I've been working professionally for the past 5 or so. And I can tell you that it isn't really as easy as just show everything and don't tell anything, because situations like this, you can't just show it. You need to explain it, especially with stuff that is as complex as this. Maybe there could have been a little bit more showing, I don't know. But I think it would have been a case at the end of the day, it wouldn't be necessarily better, it would at least have been different. Beyond that, there is a part of me that isn't so keen on the idea of the ticking clock that we have with Midoriya and One for All, or rather All for One, or whichever way it was. One for All, that's the one. The idea that he might be the last user of it, because it kind of feels like a case of, I don't know how to describe it. It's something that doesn't really sit well with me, but at the same time, I will take it him being the last ever user of it, rather than we're going to get a sequel series where his son or daughter or whomever ends up being the one that inherits it, and we get the next generation Tomura, and this whole thing just ends up being redone anew, as seems to be the case with many sequel series. But, you know, that's just different strokes for different folks, I suppose. As a whole entity, I did enjoy this week's episode, I really did. There isn't really much to discuss about because of just how much of it is wrapped up in exposition, and is more about just educating us as to the nature of things more so than it's about delivering drama or action or anything like that. I will say that I did enjoy the aftermath stuff that we did see with Endeavour, having to essentially explain himself in front of the press and the media, and having to explain his family and stuff, and just all of that, I think that was well handled. I will be honest, I didn't expect us to actually end up seeing it, but we saw it, and I enjoyed it for what it was. There's a part of me that wishes that we could have gone deeper into all of that. Maybe we will do in the coming weeks or so, but even if we don't, I do like what we've had so far, and I think that it's perfectly sufficient. The ending bit with Midoriya deciding to leave school, I understand it. I understand it totally. It makes sense for me, but, you know, I'm not going to say anything more of that because I have had that whole revelation spoilt for me. So the impact of it isn't quite as heavy for me, and I'm not going to say anything more because I've had a lot of stuff spoilt for me from this point on. But hey, whatever. We'll just say, overall, great episode, decent episode. There's not much to talk about it because I don't think it's quite as dramatically impactful as the previous few that we've had. But it's still good in its own right. With all that said and done, let us get into Comment Corner! Our first comment today comes from Risaku Gudaku Fujimaru. Apologise if I got the name wrong, but as people who watch this show will be able to attest, I'm not that good at reading at the best of times, so we'll move on. They say, I'm actually really happy how well they adapted this episode. And looking at the next episode preview, it looks like they're going to end it's going to be the episode that brings an end to the war arc. Pretty big arc, really. And the exhaustion that the characters showed through the writing is relayed to us, as I remember you saying it felt entirely. Well, looks like the war arc's succeeding in that department. Yeah, it really did. I think it's fair to say that I felt almost exhausted by the end of that whole arc by the time we got to the end of it, as the characters did. But anyway, that's a whole other discussion. They continue. Anyway, the next episode and the arc that follows it is honestly some of my favourite Deku content My Hero Academia has put out. Also, nobody apart from All Might, Sir Naitai, Gran Torino, Deku, and Bakugo know about the One for All before. Of course, apart from them, All for One, the Doctor, Shigaraki, now, of course, All Might has always dodged the question in interviews with a joke, never saying it out loud, and on the UA quote register, Deku always just had it put down as a superpower, so basically no one knew, so it's kind of not great that people know of its existence now, even if they don't know what it is yet. Thank you for your comment, and thank you for the clarification as regards to the public knowledge of One for All. Honestly, it is thanks to that and me recently playing One's Justice to benchmark my recording software that I realised that One for All has just never been said aloud by All Might. His trademark has always been his yelling of American geography and locations without the benefit of shouting One for All. And whenever Midoriya has done it, he's always done it internally. So yes, the general public has never known this. And it's something I just never picked up upon, seemingly. But hey, that's just the way it is. My perception at times can be a bit skew with, especially bearing in mind that I'm watching these fairly early in the morning for me. But anyway, move on to us. Anyway, thank you for your comment, and now move on to the second comment, which comes from X1, who says, not sure if I'd say that this was the heaviest this season, but it hit hard, really hard. Of course, that being referring to last week's episode. And yes, thank you for the comment. And honestly, I think that last week's episode would have hit a lot hard for a lot of people. The past few episodes up until this week's episode have been fairly emotionally heavy, but that's just how it is. I understand that it will have been a very difficult thing for a lot of people, and I imagine for some people who have a little bit more of an awareness as to what has been coming up next, some people might have skipped it because, to be quite frank, they don't want to be dealing with that kind of drama first thing in the morning, and I can respect that. With all that said and done, thank you both for your comments, and if you would like to leave a comment, you can do so by just going to the comment section down below. Leave a comment, leave a like, leave a subscription, click the bell, and do all the YouTube stuff that YouTube wants you to do. Thank you all for listening, and see you next time. Goodbye! Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell, and do all the YouTubey stuff that YouTube wants you to do. Go on, it'll do me a power of good. Until next time, my friends, goodbye!